Hello and welcome to episode 88 of Toward a Better Life. We're going to begin the show a little differently today with music provided by and with the permission of this episode's special guest, Damh The Bard.
If there's life out in the stars, do they turn their eyes to ours? Do we look serene? Do we look so clear? A tiny dot way out in space, the home of the human race. But things, they aren't going so well down here. From further sea to familiar shore, from highest peak to the forest floor, all creatures great and all creatures small, how can we believe that we own it all? How can we believe that we own it all? Turn on the TV, what do I see? Politicians who disagree, and another country overthrown. Sometimes I think that this world's insane, but then when I look again, I see the only madness is our own. From further sea to familiar shore, from highest peak to the forest floor, all creatures great and all creatures small, how can we believe that we own it all? How can we believe that we own it all? I cannot believe it's true. Is this the best that we can do? So be the first, put down the stone. Just like the birds up in the sky, and the fish in the ocean wide, know that this is our one and only home. From further sea to familiar shore, from highest peak to the forest floor, all creatures great and all creatures small, how can we believe that we own it all? How can we believe that we own it all? From further sea to familiar shore, from highest peak to the forest floor, all creatures great and all creatures small, how can we believe that we own it all? How can we believe that we own it all.
Thanks, Dave, for How Can We Believe That We Own It All? We'll have another selection from Dave's latest album, Raise the Flag of Green, later on the show. This is your host, Kevin Pennell. Think of me as your guide while we travel together, creating more fulfilling, rewarding, and healthier lives. You won't need much for this kind of a journey. We're just going to have an open mind, spirit, and heart. Toward a Better Life podcast features like-minded people sharing stories, ideas, and activities on what we can do to generate a better life individually and collectively. If you enjoy the episode, if you learned something today, please consider following the show, subscribing through your favorite podcast platform like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon, to name a few, and please be sure to leave a review. And please help this podcast reach out to many more people who are interested in moving toward a better life. Damh The Bard is a modern-day bard whose spirituality and love of folk tradition is expressed through his music, storytelling, and poetry. He's also the host of Druidcast, found also on several platforms. His performances are both entertaining and educational, speaking directly to the heart, and never without a good splash of humor. With 11 outstanding albums and singing and speaking engagements all over the world, Dave has become one of the most popular contemporary pagan musicians. He's a musical storyteller who works with the world of myth, where the fairy really do dance on Midsummer's Eve, where the trees talk and the hollow hills take you into the realms of Anun, where the goddess rides her horse, guiding you to magic, and the horn god of old calls to you from the shadows of the greenwood. Along with his musical concerts, Dave also gives talks, conducts workshops, participates in panel discussions at conferences and camps in the UK, Europe, Australia, Canada, and the USA, with his favorite topics including Druidry, of course, Awen, and the Creative Quest, magic, tree lore, the Mabinagi, and bushcraft. Now, settle back and enjoy this special journey into the world of Druidry with Damh The Bard. I'm delighted to welcome Damh The Bard onto our program of Toward a Better Life, and Dave is in the UK. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you, Kevin. Lovely to be here, and thanks for inviting me onto your show.
Yes. We're going to need to talk about somebody else's show during this show, just so you know. Gosh, that was almost a haiku.
Bardic inspiration strikes already, you see. There you go.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
So, everyone, we're going to be talking a little bit about Druidry today. And Druidry has, I'm going to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but it's really making quite a renaissance. It's coming back into view for many people, thousands of people across the world.
Very
and
much.
It's phenomenal. And you see it in your podcast, and I'll say it in the beginning. It's Druidcast, correct?
That's right, Druidcast, yeah.
Yeah.
Monthly for the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, absolutely.
Yeah, and it comes around the 20th of the month. And
that's right, and it started in 2007, actually, Druidcast. So it's one of the real early adopters of the podcast scene.
Yes.
And I remember talking to Philip Cargom, who was the chief of the Druid Order at that point, and I said, "There's this new technology come out. I think we should do a podcast." And he said, "Oh, okay, do one once every quarter." And I went, "No, we're going to have to do it monthly because that's how it is." And he just kind of like tooted and said, "Go on, Dave, do whatever you like," Started it, and yes, 2007 we've just launched our 205 episodes. So yeah.
I'm nodding because I listen.
Yeah.
And I have to say, everybody, that if you begin to listen to this and you catch the latest issue, you might want to take some advice from me. And definitely keep listening to the latest issue, like, share, find, subscribe, all those wonderful things. But go all the way back to 2007 to really get an incredible experience. I find that what I do is I listen probably, almost daily, to it. And it's a great piece to listen to as you drive. because you're not usually taken off the concentration of driving with it.
No, I make that a conscious thing. There's very, very rarely anything like a meditation or anything like that because I listen to podcasts when I'm driving too. And the
Yeah.
last thing you want is to have someone say, now close your eyes, and then that's not going to happen. Um, but the great thing about it is that there are people who really well-known people within the Druid pagan community who are no longer with us, who have gone into spirit already, yet their voices will always be on Druidcast.
Mhm.
And the shows aren't kind of, they're a bit like yourselves. They aren't linked to a particular season or anything like that. So
Mm-mm.
yeah, go back to episode 1, get on the journey. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So, Dave, tell us a little bit about how you got started and why you went into Druidry.
Okay. Well, I was always into music from a very, very early age. That was my one love in life.
Mm.
And whereas all of my friends were into football, soccer, whatever, they were into football. I don't care about football. So
Mhm.
they were in the schoolyard swapping their football cards. And I was listening to T-Rex and The Sweet and Slade and, all those bands back in the 70s.
Uh-huh.
Um, and what that then led me on to, I think, was so I had that, but I also had this real love of the supernatural, of what you may call the occult. And I know that word can wobble some people, but occult literally just means hidden. That's all it means, is just hidden. It's the hidden aspects of life. And so I was in the school library looking at all those old pictures of the Victorian psychics with their ectoplasm coming out of their noses, and ghost pictures, and the Loch Ness monster, and the Yeti and Bigfoot, and all of those things, those Fortean things, I suppose you call
Hmm.
them now, Fortean stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was really into that. And I guess that then led me into a love and interest in magic, and not the stagecraft magic of Las Vegas or anything like that, but the magic of the old school magician of Merlin, of Gandalf, the wizard type magic. And at the time, I was a teenager then. At the time, the only books that you could find were ones written by Aleister Crowley, who's not necessarily someone you'd invite round for tea, I've got to say, you know. But the books the books on the Golden Dawn were available. Aleister Crowley's books were available. And I was very much into rock, as I've said, T-Rex, Slade, Sweet. That then led me into the songs of Rainbow, of Ronnie James Dio, of Led Zeppelin, of Black
Hmm.
Sabbath,
Hmm.
and their lyrics are all magical lyrics. I mean, you listen to some of Led Zeppelin's, Stairway to Heaven and The Battle of Evermore, that, they're just magical lyrics, take you off into a different place, very mythical.
Hmm.
And so all of these things were kind of coming together. And I ended up being initiated into a ceremonial magic lodge in my teens.
Hmm.
And it was very hermetic magic based again on the Golden Dawn. But after a number of years of that, the group imploded, as spiritual groups sometimes do.
Hmm.
And I was left searching. And gradually, towards the end of my time with that group, I was yearning for something that had mud in it, the earth. You
Hmm.
know, Hermetic magic is very much out there. It's the search for your holy guardian angel. It's the Kabbalah. It's, Egyptian deities. I suddenly felt a yearning for something from the land, from
Hmm.
the earth itself. And as I looked around, I realized that would lead me into what you might call some of the pagan traditions, the old pagan traditions. And so I sent off for all of these adverts in Prediction magazine back in the day. And one of them was a little classified ad that said, if you're interested in green spirituality, you may be interested in the Druid send off for our introductory pack. So I sent off for it. And that was the Order of Bards, Ovets and Druids. And that was March 1994.
Hmm.
And I got the leaflet back and I was reading through, and then it started talking about the Bard.
Mm.
and about the held within this earthy tradition, ancient tradition, was a love of the arts. Not
Mm.
only that, but a connection that the arts were in some way sacred.
Mm-hmm.
That by expressing your creativity, you're keying in to the spirit and energy of the great big whatever it is,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the God spirit, whatever you want to call it, and of course my greatest love was music, and I thought, oh wow, that's it. So I sent off and I started the course in September 1994, and the Bardic course, it's done through the post, is
Mm-hmm.
online now as well, of course,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but then it was sent out monthly through the post, and I read these booklets, and I just thought, I'm home. I've come home.
Mm-hmm.
I've found my home. I've found my tradition, and I found my people,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still there. So I must have done. you know. But what it did is it answered many things in me. It brought together that idea that creativity is sacred, that there's this creative force within the universe that within the Druid tradition is called the Awen. Within other traditions, it could be called the mead of poetry, but ultimately it's the same thing. It's the creative force. There is the ovate grade, the ovate. Well, you ask somebody in the street what a bard is, they'll have a rough idea of what a bard can be. What's a druid? Oh, yeah, we know what a druid is. Old men, Stonehenge, beard, white wellies. But roughly you can have an idea of what a druid in the archetype of a druid. But if you say, what is an ovate tumbleweed?
Yeah.
Nobody hardly still has any idea of what an ovate is, but that is one of the schools of Druidry that was named back in the time of Caesar. And the ovate, if it could be described as anything, the ovate is the shaman. The ovate is the druid, witch, is the wizard, is the magician, is the person with one foot in this world and one foot in the other world. And of course, that really appealed to my love of magic. And then of course you have, I loved Lord of the Rings when I was a kid. I had a big poster of Gandalf on my
Mm-hmm.
wall. Um, and then of course that's the druid, that archetype of the wise sage. Um, and there it was, all held within this one tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing what happens when you send off a stamped address envelope.
Well, that's why I say that even before we started this, we were talking about how lives can be parallel as far as how some of this stuff unfolds. And this is about Dave. It's not about Kevin. But the short of it is, in 2003 or 2004, I remember, wasn't Obad online then as far as website?
Oh yeah, they would have had a website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I went and I started to look at that around the same time that I did some training under Michael Harner's style of shamanism.
Mhm.
And I looked at that and I said, wow, that is some really cool stuff. That really is really attractive to me. And it took a while to get back to it, but all these books I've been collecting, not knowing why.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But now I know why. I mean, I've got all these books, and Vicky, my partner, was over in Somerset. Probably now it's been 15 years ago, and she got a copy of this. Is
Stuart
that like,
Piggott.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I haven't read that one yet. The one that I'm working on right now is, believe it or not, also that was picked up, and I can't tell you when or where, but I've got Ross Nichols' book.
Right. Oh, okay.
And
That's
when you're
quite rare
talking,
now, that.
oh, is it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that really is interesting to me when you talk about the bards, and yes, I agree that Ovates is also interesting just because of my interest in that same area. I get it. I totally get it. But the bards seemed to be that common ground that kept Druidry together. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to say during the Middle Ages, maybe from 900 until about 1700, the bards really kind of kept stuff together because you had Druidry in the background, but the bards was what the public and what the church allowed. Does that make sense? Is that true?
It is. You will find bardic poetry from before the Middle Ages
Oh,
being
yeah.
being written down in the Middle Ages. So the Mabinogi, for instance, was written
Hmm.
down by Welsh scribes in the 1300s. And then there's the Book of Taliesin, which is a lot of the
Hmm.
books, a lot of the poetry of the bard Taliesin. Now, whether Taliesin was one person or whether or not it was a title is hard to say, because if it was one person, they were very, very prolific.
Hmm.
Um, but again, that was written down by Christian scribes. So you will find that a lot of these ancient texts are very much told um, through a Christian lens, a medieval Christian
Yes.
lens. But what you'll find also is, particularly with the poems of Taliesin, is they are bookended. So they are dedicated to God at the beginning, and they give thanks to God at the end. And when that monk, who may well have had bardic leanings even at
Hmm.
that age, wrote down those words, by dedicating it to God at the beginning and thanking God at the end, everything held within that is sacrosanct, cannot be changed, is holy.
Hmm.
And so you find that this person will say, praise to the power who orders highest heaven and to the shores of earth extends dominion, is the opening line to the spoils of Anu. And then it'll tell a very, very pagan story of how King Arthur traveled to the underworld to find a cauldron. And then at the end, it will say, and thanks, praise be to God. And so, they basically thank them, blessed be those monks, because without them we wouldn't have anything. But you can pick out those stories, and you can say, yes, that has a feeling that probably it was being told by bards between the 600 and 800s
Hmm.
AD. Probably that's
Yeah.
when it was probably at its height. So yeah, and the bards, they kept the myths alive and stories
Hmm.
alive. And I think that's the gift of the bardic tradition, and later on the troubadour. And again, this didn't just happen within the Celtic lands. This happened within the northern European, Germanic, and Scandinavian lands as well, because their bards were called the skalds, and the old Anglo-Saxon bards were called the shops. And they were the ones who kept alive all of the stories of the Norse gods as well, and the Icelandic Eddas and all those kinds of things. So the bards, I mean, bless them and love them, because without that we wouldn't have even have these names. We would not have the name of Llŷr or Manawydan or Rhiannon or Ceridwen, and we
Hmm.
wouldn't have the name, Odin or Thor or Freya or any of these old stories we have. So yes, whether or not we could say that there's an unbroken tradition, that's debatable. But the stories were certainly kept alive, and that's what I think the important thing.
And that's the piece that I'm talking about too.
Yeah,
Exactly the same thing is it kept it alive.
yeah.
So that's a lot of times with the stories, it's so important. In one of the, I'm in the process, I'm in the lessons, and one of the things that they talked about last night, when I was looking through it, is Philip Cargam was talking about how getting yourself interested enough into storytelling, and
Hmm.
it's fascinating. There's nothing like sitting down in the fire around a fire and listening to someone tell a story, and it captivates you when it's done properly. And it's really interesting because like for an example, the storytelling that you referenced, that there is a storytelling opportunity annually around the spring or summer, I think it is, in the UK. Storytelling circles or whatever is kind of a almost like a convention of storytellers. And then he
There's
says,
loads. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and then
There's lots of them.
the other one is, he says, and the other one is in Tennessee. And I went, oh my gosh, it's my neighbor.
Ah, brilliant.
So, needless to say, I haven't looked yet. I'm going to later today, I think, and find out when some of these are going to be because I have had the opportunity to sit down and listen to a story, and it's so profound when you do that, and
Mm.
it touches you on so many different levels, and somebody would maybe be touched in one particular area of their soul, and another one would be touched in a particular area of their devotion to the land. Another one would, it just goes on and on. But that's the unique part, isn't it, about how this stuff works?
I think the thing is we are storytelling animals. We
Mm.
live our lives through story. We talk to our friends and tell each other the stories of what happened last night. It's part of the reason Netflix is so popular. We experience our lives through story. And I think that is touching something very, very deep in the old amygdala lizard brain that we have. And what I think it does is it takes us, we look around. I'm talking to you on an iMac. That would have been. Can you imagine how magical that would have been to our hunter-gatherer ancestors? That I'm talking to you in
Yeah.
America on a
Yeah.
screen. Oh my word, it would blow their minds. But to those people, their lives, we may have seen it as survival, but I don't think they would have described it as survival. They would have just described it as how life is, of hunter gathering, and sometimes the food is scarce and sometimes it's prolific, and you hunt in different areas of the land, and maybe one day you are hunting in the shadow of a mountain,
Hmm.
along a plain, in the shadow of a mountain, and the shadow of the mountain is keeping you cool in that hot summer. And that night, the sun goes down, it gets cooler, and one of the people sitting around the campfire starts to say something along the lines of, you know, Grandfather Mountain has
Hmm.
been here since the world began. Grandfather Mountain protected the tribe at times of storms, and that's the root of the bardic story, is the story being told around campfires by our hunter-gatherer people. And I believe that that's the root of all of our myths as well.
Hmm.
That basically all of our myths are personifications, I think that's a word, personifications of elemental forces
Yeah.
that have that we as humans have created stories about to help engage us with those elemental forces. So the first stories of Tyrannus, for instance, may well have been the story of the spirit of a storm,
Hmm.
uh, you know, and that was then given the name Tyrannus, and the same with Thor or Thunor, and then suddenly that you start to these spirits start to have interactions with each other, and then the myths begin to be, to run on their own. But I think, yeah, yeah, a good story. I mean, we still use this in our shamanic techniques when we do path workings, because
Hmm.
path workings are essentially stories that we follow on an inner world,
Yes.
and so a story can be, you can go off all kinds of places with stories. Yeah,
Well, even I use stories when I've done hypnotherapy with people.
right.
And it was interesting when you look at the light body and you think about light body meditations and how we talk about, you know, you get yourself in and among the trees and you listen to the sound of the wind as it goes through the leaves of the trees and it sounds like a song in and of itself. And then the owl joins in with his own sense of melody to
Mm,
blend in that beautiful picture and that beautiful story. And
mm,
you do this and I do it in hypnotherapy, and people are
yeah,
just in la la land when that's happening,
yeah.
and it's amazing, but it's a story. It really is. So,
And you have to ask, you ask yourself, or I ask myself sometimes, when I am in that world and I am imagining, am I in my brain, or am I actually somewhere else?
oh yeah.
And I feel like you can tell the difference. Sometimes you can feel, oh no, this is just imagining, I'm just imagining. But then sometimes you just go, oh, where did that cave come from? I didn't create that cave, you know,
Mhm.
and then and suddenly you're somewhere else
Yes.
within those kind of journeying techniques.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Michael Harner talked about in his book, The Way of the Shaman, that if someone has never done a journey in their life and they want to try this, his recommendation is have somebody there with you that has done this, because some of the experiences that you have can be frightening.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
said that's an interesting thing, because I have actually talked with people in my practice about this sort of thing, as far as shamanic work and journey work, and they say, well, yeah, I tried that once. I said, how'd that work for you? I said, never doing it again. And I said, really? Why are you not going to do it again? Because I got scared. And I said, okay. And then I
Yeah.
explained to them, just give it another shot, but have somebody nearby that has done that with them, and just to help guide them through it a little bit. But I don't want to I don't want to discourage anybody from doing that, because it's a wondrous experience. It's a very deep meditation, and absolutely, Dave, I'm with you 100% on, because I've been there too. You're in this spot, and all of a sudden you're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're in another
And
spot.
I think everyone has that ability within them.
Hmm.
And I think the part of the reason why people can feel potentially frightened, it's almost, it could be more disorientated,
Yeah.
because you're not used to it. It's not something you're used to, and it's not a part of the mind. It's not part of our consciousness we use on a regular basis to survive in our modern world. It's something that has let, almost in a way, lay dormant maybe for 1,000 years, you know,
Mhm.
and then suddenly we open the door again. And I mean, I personally have had nothing but um, enlightening, wise stuff happening with my work. Um, I've I can't say that that is probably how it is every time, but I do think I think the idea of having someone with you, if you're going to do it for the first time, who knows what they're doing, is really good advice. I think that that is the advice of coming out of here. If there's anyone listening to this now who just thinks, "Oh, I'm going to have a go at that," and they sit alone in their room and light a candle, you'll probably be absolutely fine. But
Hmm.
I would always recommend having someone close by who does know what they're doing, and can help you out. You know, that's it.
And how often, when you've done stuff like this, a deeper meditation, light body work, journeys, there is no time or space.
Mm,
And you go into something like this. I remember a couple of them. In fact, it was just recent that I've had this happen again. And I have to thank beginning this journey, and affirming everything and moving forward with the druidic aspects of this, because it's reawakened another piece of me that's been dormant for probably a few years. And
yeah.
it feels good. But
Yeah.
I noticed that sometimes when you go into this deep meditation, I remember one in particular that I did years and years ago. I remember going in mid-afternoon, and it was a phenomenal experience for me. I went into a teepee, and the man gave me a medicine stick, a very dear friend of mine, and he says, "You really need to do this," and I did it. And I'm not going to go into the details of it, but I got so involved in that, and at a point, I was thrust back into reality.
Mm,
And I stepped out of that teepee, and Dave, it was pitch black outside.
mm.
And if you would have asked me how long I'd been in there, I'd say maybe 30 minutes. No, I was in there for like 3.5 hours.
Yeah, that is a normal thing with this
Mm.
stuff, I find. And also, if you look at the old myths and the poetry that talks about the other world, um, you know, the other world of the Brythonic peoples of the Druids of old would have been Anuvan or Anun, and the other world of the Skalds may be one of the 9 worlds in the tree of Yggdrasil. You know, um, to me, they're the other world. It is the other world. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's the other world. But the theme that is always there within the poems is that um, there are these things called imramas or soul journeys.
Okay.
One of them is one of Bran, the son of Feval, is one of them. It's an old poem. The Voyage of Maelduin is another poem, and they are soul journeys. They are imramas where these people go on quests over the seas to the west, and there they find islands and they find the other world. They find Anun, but when they return back to Britain or Ireland, the first person steps off the ship, and on placing their feet on the Isle of Erin or of the Isle of Albion, they fall into the dust of ages
Mm,
because they've been, and no one could remember the name Bran, son of Feval, except as the as a person held within an ancient story.
mm,
And so that kind of like losing hours is an absolute key that you've not entirely been here all that time.
well, that's it.
you know
You
and
know,
I get that playing my harp. I will pick up my harp and I will sit down with my harp. I will close my eyes, and then suddenly 3 hours have gone and I'm late for everything.
mhm.
And I felt like I've been sitting there for about 15 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now we talk about the beauty of the harp, and we think about the beauty of many other instruments. And I've tinkered with the flute a few times.
Hmm.
I still have all my flutes. I think I got four or five, six of flutes. But I know that sometimes, as weird as it may sound, when I'm doing my editing of this stuff, hours can go by and I have no clue
Hmm.
because it
Hmm.
gets so wrapped up in. Now I'm still here in the physical sense. It's not
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
same. But what
Oh
I'm
yeah.
saying is you can get yourself so involved in something like that it's like an entrainment matter that you
Yeah.
become one with everything around you.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. One of the other things we talk about the bardic aspects. One of the other things that's very attractive to me is throughout my life, I have just found that when anything gets difficult for me, I find that if I can just get myself into the woods, if I can just get myself among the trees,
Hmm.
and if needed, I take my shoes and socks off and I walk on the dirt,
Yeah.
everything seems to come back together. And I can feel for lack of terminology, just a whoosh, and I feel better.
Hmm.
And it goes
Yeah.
into some of the stuff that people are starting to look at today about forest bathing, for an example.
Hmm.
And the Japanese came up with it, what was it, 1984, 85, something like that. And it was a wonderful discovery and everything. But, we've been doing that for thousands of years, but we
Yeah.
forgot. It's
Yeah.
like so much of this we have forgotten. And I think courses and organizations and opportunities like this, like we're talking about with OBOD, that it's an opportunity that you have to regenerate what's down deep inside of you to get away from all the electronic stuff. What do you think?
Hmm. Absolutely. I think that's part of the reason why Druidry is becoming, like you say, having another renaissance right now. Um, I think that we, as a species, may well have forgotten that we're just another animal on a planet with an infinite number of species of other animals.
Hmm.
We are, without doubt, we're the dominant animal. We've done that by getting rid of most of our own predators wherever we live.
Hmm.
But ultimately, we are a very, by our own definition, intelligent ape, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and modern cultures have forgotten their interdependence with the earth.
Hmm.
That we are dependent upon this planet for our survival, and we're dependent upon bees for our survival.
Hmm.
The whole planet is interdependent of each other, and I think that a lot of people now are turning around and saying, what I see and what I do in my everyday life does not give my life meaning. I think there's this idea that life is a search for happiness. I disagree. I don't think it is. I think it's a search for meaning. And I think if
Hmm.
you find meaning, you'll find happiness. I think if you search for happiness, it will be fleeting moments of happiness and then you'll tumble again. And if you haven't got meaning to hold you when you're tumbling, you'll keep tumbling. Whereas if you find meaning in your life, then you'll find that happiness. And when you do tumble, you'll be held by what you find within the meaning of your life. And I think that things like Druidry offer a connection to the natural world. If I was to sum up Druidry in one sentence, it would be a set of skills that allow a deeper connection to the natural worlds, both seen and unseen. That would be Druidry to me. And that's what it is. And I think that's what a lot of people are yearning for right now and don't necessarily know how to do it. Um, but the irony is that actually it can be as simple as going for a walk in the woods.
Hmm.
It can be as simple as that. But when you go for that walk in the woods, you need to shut your brain off. When you go into the woods, people say to me, I go for a walk in the woods, I don't see any wildlife at all. And I say, well, why do you think that might be? And they say, I don't know. And I say, well, when you go to the woods, what do you do? Well, I park the car and I walk into the woods. And I said, and what's your mind doing? And they say, well, I'm thinking about the bill I haven't paid, or I'm thinking, did I leave the cooker on, or did I lock the door when I left the house, or what I'm going to do, and I'll see my friends later. Anything but focusing on the moment of walking through that woods. And of course, when you approach a wood with all that going on in your head, you walk fast, you make a lot of noise. What they do say to me is, we hear a lot of birds. And I said, well, I'm not surprised you hear a lot of birds because do you know what birds are in the forest? No, they're sentinels. They're the ones, and they are singing at the top of their voice to tell every single animal in the woods to run away because one of the most feared predators on the whole planet has just walked into the woods, right? So Druidry, what it can do is to offer you that kind of like moment to just stop. When you get out the car, before you walk in the woods, stop, breathe, listen,
Mm.
open the senses, shut the mind off. If you're thinking, label it thinking, like you do in a meditation technique, and just say thinking and let it go like clouds on a blue sky. And then once you feel that you're present, then slowly walk into the woods. And then once you're in the woods, find a spot and sit in that same place for 20 minutes with doing nothing. And it's about 20 minutes and the woods will stop seeing you. It will stop noticing you're there, and suddenly the fox might come out at your foot, the birds might land next to you, and suddenly you become part of the woods. And those are the skills I think that you're kind of encouraged to explore within the Druid tradition, that just change that from being a walk in the woods to being something a bit deeper. Yeah.
I remember following in the ways of the indigenous people of North America, specifically northeastern woodland tribes. My teacher and my friend, Two Feathers, taught me a lot about, connecting with the world and connecting with the woods. And
Mm,
it's interesting, isn't it, that the Celts and the indigenous people of North America, and there are others around the world, are the same way. And people wonder why it was that the Celts and the Cherokee got so interested in each other, and they really connected. I mean, they propagated as a
hmm.
result of that. And they said, what in the world brought them together? It's that common reverence for the natural world as part of it. And it's the common reverence of and respect of everything around us. I don't care if it's
Yeah.
a tree or a bee.
Hmm.
There's honesty, there's reverence, and there's appreciation, and there's becoming one with everything around you. And I've often said, don't be a part of the forest, be a part of the forest.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Along with my Druidry, I did some wilderness awareness stuff
Yep.
because I wanted to complete the circle. The Druidry was the mythology, was the magic, but I also thought I wanted to do some really physical connection with the woodlands as well. So I got really into the books of Tom Brown Jr. I don't know if you ever read him.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, right. So I read his book, The Tracker and The Quest, and
Hmm.
all those books. And Will. is it Will Young? Not John Young. John
John
Young.
Young. Yeah, yeah.
John Young, who was one of his people, the Wilderness Awareness School and the Kamana
Hmm.
courses that he runs.
Yep.
And I went on a course with Ray Mears, who's a big survival expert over in Britain. And I think if you combine those two things of wilderness awareness and the spiritual connection. I could see for years I could take you into the woods and I could tell you all of the mythology about almost every tree in that wood, but
Wow.
I couldn't tell you what I could use them for. I couldn't tell you if I could eat the berries or
Hmm.
if I,
Okay.
it's the wilderness awareness stuff fills in those gaps and offers a different relationship. And once you've got both of those sides, I think you've completed the circle, and you really could kind of have a very deeper relationship with the woods.
I've
Yeah.
had a guest of mine a couple of times. He was actually my first guest on the program a few years ago. His name is Michael Douglas, and Michael has the Maine Primitive Skills School up in Maine.
Right.
And he was actually a student of Tom Brown.
Oh, there you go.
And one of the other fellows up there was Mal Stevens, and there's a list. Lou Fowling. There's a lot of different friends of mine that I've met through the years, and that was part of that journey, also, Dave. That years ago I did a series of workshops. I called them ancestral healing workshops, and it's dealing with what our ancestors did to take care of ourselves, take care of the physical bodies that we have,
Hmm.
and not just the physical aspects of it, but part of that ancestral healing dealt with, you know, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. All of those pieces are in one. And, it's so significant when you're able to bind them together. And I appreciate what you're saying about you complete the circle, because
Hmm.
it is what it is. It's a circle. It's not linear. It's not, well, I'll pick this up on the way as I go by. No, it becomes a part of you. And when you recognize something, you say, "Oh, wait, now I know why that hurt." Side note is we have the long needle pine, for an example. And I don't know that you have it in the UK, but
Mm.
here you can tell it because the leaves on it, there are five leaves on it, and yet it looks like pine needles. But if you really look at it, there are five leaves to each one of those little things.
Right.
And that depicts it as that particular type of tree. Do you know that if you take a few of those little leaf sections and you put it in a glass of hot water, steep it for about 15 minutes, you'll get more vitamin C than you will out of three oranges?
Amazing. There you go. But that is wonderful, isn't it? And one of the things that I realized that I took back into the wilderness awareness school, actually, because when I was taught how to make fire by friction,
Mm.
um, the trees, weirdly enough, the trees here that I was recommended to utilize as part of the drill and the lower part of the fire by
Hmm.
friction was either willow or alder.
Okay.
Now, willow and alder traditionally grow by water. Yeah, they're
Hmm.
water trees.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are.
Now, if you look at mythology, which of course none of these people with knives at this survival school was thinking about, they were just kind of doing it from that angle. When I heard the word willow and alder as being the trees that created fire, and those trees live by water, and then I thought, okay, well, within the old tale of the Mabinogi, alder is linked with the god Bran, and Bran is is oracular and visionary and sees into the future and is, if you know the story, he has his head cut off and all that kind of stuff, but he is like the male water tree would be the link with alder. And willow is very much connected with the moon and moon magic
Hmm.
and feminine energies.
Right.
And so I looked at this drill and this receptive bit, and I thought, what would happen if I made the drill out of drill out of alder, and the receptive part of it out of willow?
Yeah.
How would that work? And funnily enough, these two forces come together of the two trees, the two mythologies, and they make fire. I mean, isn't that wonderful? So
That's grand.
yeah, yeah.
But that's how you can see stuff like this. You open
Yeah,
your eyes.
that's it.
You reopen your eyes that have been closed through eons, and you're able to come alive from it.
I like it.
That's what all this is about, isn't it?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
makes it very, very exciting.
I like it. What Kerry's, my wife, is a big Terry Pratchett fan, and she says that Terry Pratchett says you open your eyes and then you open them again.
Hmm.
And I thought, that's it. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Vicky and I are both we love Terry Pratchett. Such grand, grand stories he can tell, and he could
Oh
tell.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But when I look at a lot of these things, oh, Dave, I sit back and I wonder about how to convey this information to people around us. And we're doing it now, but to try and encourage people that you look for maybe some of the signs of maybe this does make more sense to me than what it is that I have been doing as far as my level of spirituality. And I've said all along through the years that, if somebody needs, and I'm not being negative about this, but it's if somebody needs to go to church 7 days a week, 5 hours a day in order to reach their level of spirituality, that's fine. That is their path, and that's okay. It's not
Mm,
my path, but it's their path. And if that's what they need to do, that's fine. But for the ones that are wondering, isn't there more to life than me just doing these matters as a matter of rote? And one of the things that I appreciated too, when you start looking at Druidry, some people say, well, that's just a false religion. No, it's not even a religion. And
mm,
that's where the confusion begins. And somebody asked me the other day, but correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, Druidry, yes, we can look at it from a philosophical standpoint. We can look at it from so many different angles, but to me, it's like some other interest that I've had in my life. It's a way of life.
mm. Yeah. I think if you got 50 druids in a room and ask them this question, you'd get 51 different answers,
Yeah.
you know. And I think that to me is what I love about it, is
Yeah.
because, to some of those people in that room, it will be their religion.
Hmm.
It will, that's what they will call it. Druidry is my religion. Some people will say it's my spirituality. Some people say it's a way of life. Some people will say it's my hobby, and it's just the way I look at the world or whatever. And I think it's that classic thing of like, there are many paths up the mountain, but they all lead up to the top of the mountain at the end of the day, and I really like that. And one of the, I'm a pagan druid, and we have Christian druids in Obod. We
Yep.
have Buddhist druids in Obod. We have atheist druids in Obod. Um, and but when I first joined, I found that hard to kind of comprehend. Surely there's one way of doing this. And it can be frustrating as well, because sometimes people just want to be told what to do.
Hmm.
And you'll know yourself, you're doing the OBOD course, that's not how it works.
Mm-mm.
You are not told what to do. You are offered experiences
Yep.
that then guide you on your own path through the course. And that can be incredibly liberating, and it can be incredibly frustrating for some people, especially if you've been brought up with the idea that all of the truth of all of the worlds lies within one book called the Bible. If suddenly people say to you, actually there's more, and off you go and get it, it might be frustrating. Oh, can't you just tell me how to find the gods? No, I
No,
can't.
because I'm
You've
not
got
you.
you you've got to do this. There's work to be done here. It's not so but then I've realized quite soon that the fact that that doesn't exist within Druidry, that there is not one true way, actually means that there is very little dogma as well. you
Yes.
know and there's very little thou shalt do this, thou
Right.
shalt do that.
Hmm.
There are some people within the Druid tradition, again, that wish there was more of that, but I think that just falls to the wayside. And actually it's the practice that matters. It's the practice and the path and the personal connection that really counts within this thing we call Druidry.
Hmm.
So yes, I think that I've got a great deal of respect of people who have a strong belief in their religion, and go to that church 7 days a week, and they found their truth and they found their way up that mountain. Um, and so long as they don't think that they need to tell everyone else that their one way up the mountain is the only way up the mountain,
Hmm.
I'm totally with them,
Hmm.
and maybe it might be worth hopping off of your path up the mountain and checking out this other path and seeing if you like that as well, and yeah, that's so all good.
Yeah, that's one of the things too that attracted me to this and affirmed to me in my own mind that I've probably been a druid throughout my life. I've just never sat down long enough to study.
Yeah, yeah.
And part of it has to do with the fact that I've accepted so many different ways. I had a conversation some time ago with someone, and they were asking about my relationship with God and so forth. And I said, well, I like to consider myself as eclectic. And she says, well, if you're eclectic, you believe in everything. I said, no, I believe in what works for Kevin. Now, what
Yes.
works for Kevin may not work for Jane or Dave or
Yeah.
whatever. And that's okay because I'm finding my own sense of awareness and my sense of oneness with the world around me through the methods that work for me. And that's okay.
Mm,
And I'll
mm.
continue on that path until I find something new.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I find something new, I weigh it and see, does this work for me? If it does, great. I've got one more piece in my toolbox.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, I don't criticize it. I don't poo-poo it. It's just not for me. And that's okay.
Mm.
So, yeah.
I had something become quite clear to me over the course of the pandemic because
Mm,
when it arrived, a lot of my druidry was outward based. It was all about service to Obod, about the community. And when all of that disappeared because we could no longer meet together, I kind of thought, oh wow, what do I believe? I've forgotten, I've almost forgotten what it is that I believe, and where's Dave amongst all of this stuff? And so I did a lot of soul searching, and I re-listened to the words of my own songs that I'd written over the years, and what I heard myself singing back to me was animism.
hmm,
Um, and I realized that that deep within me, my druidry, my paganism had always been animistic,
hmm,
and not necessarily theistic.
mhm.
Um, so I feel for Dave, going back to the idea of the spirit of the mountain, that early hunter-gatherer and their way of connecting to the world by giving these spirits names of energies that we, to survive and to interact with, we need to understand and be part of. Um, to me, that is animism, and it's much harder to blow up a mountain to gather minerals from that mountain if
Mhm,
that mountain has a name, and
mhm,
if that mountain is known locally to have a spirit and an
mhm.
energy and stories attached to that mountain.
Yeah.
And so I think animism to me is a key to is actually a key to helping the planet right now,
Oh, yeah.
and to get through all of the troubles that we're in right now. So that's my path up that mountain. And again, it's not everybody's, but it's certainly the one I've found. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I often will ask my guests, what do they do to create a better life for themselves? And that would be a question I'd pose to you, Dave. What does Dave do to create a better life for themselves or himself? And we probably already answered it, but if you were to succinctly share it.
Wow. Create a better life for myself. I think for me, what has helped me to create a better life for myself is congruency.
Hmm.
Um, to have it that my actions in the world reflect my values. Um, because for a while, I don't think they necessarily did, and I knew they didn't. And so I had to make changes in my life so that I could feel that what I felt about the world was being backed up by my actions within it.
Hmm.
Um, and and part of that comes down to very mundane things like the choices of what I eat, where I shop, where I bank, you know, um, all those mundane things in life that you may take for granted. I felt I could do better than I had been doing. So I made a lot of changes. I changed everything pretty much. I changed absolutely everything. And then, of course, I think what makes my life better is to be able to walk 8 minutes from my house down to the seashore here. I live very near Brighton on the south
Okay.
coast of Britain. Yeah. So, I mean, I can see the sea out of my window, and I go down there and I can sit by that sea and I can listen to the sound of the sea waves as they crash onto the shore. And I will just say, hello, Njord, hello, Manawydan.
Mm.
I'm here. Dave's here. I want you to know how much I love you, how much I value you. You come here, you give me nothing but peace, and I want to hear, and I will give you nothing but love.
Mm.
And I would do that as I walked into the woods, and I would talk to the spirit of the woods there as well. And I think that that is what gives me a better life, is that connection with the elements and congruency.
Ditto.
Okay.
Dave, you have so many different opportunities, I'll say, for connection as far as like your music. And I've even noticed, I didn't see it before, but it's no surprise. I've noticed you have a few books in the store at Obod, and that's kind of interesting. I'll say, okay, I am gonna have to read those now. But if somebody wanted to reach out to Dave to find out more about this sort of thing, more about Druidry, more about Obod, what are some things they could do that?
Well, certainly go to the OBOD website, which is druidry.org. Very simple website URL. Go there. It's a massive website, and
Yes.
it's got links to libraries, to online communities, the Facebook page where we have our tea with the Druid and our fireside chats with Emma. There's links to the Druidcast, of course, which we mentioned at the beginning. If you want to connect with the Druid tradition, that's where I would send you, simply to that one site, and everything leads off from there. Druidry.org. If you want to connect with me personally, the hub of all things Dave on the internet is my website, which is paganmusic.co.uk.
Yeah.
So pop over there. There's links to my Facebook, Instagram. There's my blog. There's my link to my Patreon page. Everything is on there. So yeah, pop along. And if you do, send us a message and say hello. I like it when people say hello.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have a recent CD, I think you just released not too long ago, which is Raise the Flag of Green. Is that
That's
correct?
it.
Yeah.
Raise the Flag of Green came out at Beltane this year. My first set of songs since 2015.
Mm.
I'd been concentrating on creating albums based on the Welsh myths, the Mabinogi. So there are four branches, and I did the first, second, and third branch of the Mabinogi, which are double albums telling the stories, the myths, that have music into. So if you want to learn about the Mabinogi, go there and listen to those. But I said to the spirits of the Mabinogi, I said, "Come on, give me a break. I need to write some other songs." So they reluctantly backed off. I managed to write 9 songs or record an album of 10 songs. And the moment in Beltane when I pressed that release button, they were hammering on my door saying, "Come on, we need the fourth branch now." So I've immediately started to write and record my next double album, which will be the final fourth branch of the Mabinogi. So yeah. Yeah.
Are those through your website? The
You can get the
first.
CDs through my website, downloads from my website, but all of my music is on all of the usual streaming services, Apple Music, Tidal,
Mm.
Spotify. They're all everywhere. So you,
Okay.
you can't fail to find me.
And everyone, we're featuring a song on this podcast. One of the excerpts from that happens to really resonate with me personally, and I hope it does with you. But the album is easy enough to find on Spotify that Dave just shared with you, Raise the Flag of the Green, and one in particular that I really enjoyed a lot is called Under the Trees.
Under the Trees.
Driving home at night in the company of a storm. Endless tail lights, I'm sitting here alone. Another day gone by, where do they all go? It's getting harder to justify a life on death row. I wanna go where I can heal my soul, talk to the wisest people I know. I will go. The soothing sound of forest leaves and all my troubles start to ease. Forgive me, please. You will find me under the trees. When we are born, we are told you're part of a great machine, no chance of parole. But life is a miracle, this I know so well. It's time to turn the key of my prison cell. I wanna go where I can heal my soul, talk to the wisest people I know. I will go. The soothing sound of forest leaves and all my troubles start to ease. Forgive me, please. You will find me under the trees. And I know that it's true, it's so much harder to do than to say. All that I can say to you is come and meet me there too. You know the way. I wanna go where I can heal my soul, talk to the wisest people I know. I will go. The soothing sound of forest leaves and all my troubles start to ease. Forgive me, please. I wanna go where I can heal my soul, talk to the wisest people I know. I will go. The soothing sound of forest leaves and all my troubles start to ease. If you agree, come and join me under the trees.
Dave, it's been such a grand delight and words cannot express how much I appreciate you sharing your story and sharing the insights to create a better life for us. Are there any other things that you'd like to share in closing for this time together?
I will. Well, why don't I close with just a thing we do in Druid ceremonies, which is at the end of the ritual, we hold hands in a circle, and we say what we call the oath of peace. And we usually say it 3 times, but I'll just say it the once here. And so, imagine if you're don't do this if you're driving, listeners. But if you're not, close your eyes. Imagine we're all holding our hands around the world, and just listen to these words, or join in when I say these words, which are: we swear by peace and love to stand, heart to heart and hand in hand. Mark, O Spirit, and hear us now, confirming this, our sacred vow. Blessed be.
Blessed be. Thank you, Dave. Enjoy
Thank you.
a beautiful day among the trees and out on the shore.
Thank you, Kevin. Nice to speak to you. Thank you.
That was wonderful, don't you think? Thanks, Dave, for sharing a bit of your magical journey in the world of Druidry. Check out the show notes for information on the Druid tradition and connecting with Dave the Bard. You can begin by visiting OBOD's website, druidry.org. That's druidry.org. You may connect with Dave the Bard directly through his website, paganmusic.co.uk. paganmusic.co.uk. For further insights and advice on how to create a better life for yourself, I invite you to visit my website, towardabetterlife.com. You'll find my blog, some online classes, further podcasts, and products to supplement your journey, and it's growing as we move along. I also offer Toward a Better Life mentoring sessions, too. Join me next time on Toward a Better Life as Jeff Patterson joins me. Jeff has successfully blended martial arts with meditation for over 36 years. He's published books and hundreds, many instructional videos. Jeff is also the founder of the Yielding Warrior online program and has worked with thousands of students from around the world. That's next time. As I said earlier, if you enjoyed the episode and learned something today, please do follow and subscribe to Toward a Better Life through your favorite podcast platform like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, or whichever you choose, and be sure to leave me a good review. This helps the podcast more than I can say, and it allows us to reach more and more people each day in each episode, which would mean the world to me. If you have any questions, or if you'd like to be my guest, please write to me, Kevin at towardabetterlife.com. That's Kevin at towardabetterlife.com. Until next time, do enjoy your journey toward a better life.